Everyone, Walter Crosby with Helix Sales Development, your host for Sales and Cigars. Got another episode today, a little different, a little interesting. Joe Rockey's our guest, and Joe's got a real estate business where he does some investment, but we talk a lot about his podcast that he's doing, and he's got a different slant, so it's kind of cool. You might want to listen up on that, pay attention, and be able to, if you're a football fan, NFL fan, you're going to get some local knowledge the way they're going to run this podcast. So that's fun. It was a great conversation about sales, being commission only mindset, mental toughness. So go grab a cigar, go grab a cocktail, and strap in for another fun episode of Sales and Cigars. Hey Joe, welcome to the podcast. I appreciate you taking some time to jump on with us today.
Yes, thank you for having me. Yeah.
So let's start with the background. That there you have football in your hand. You got Pittsburgh Steelers headphones. You got a chair. Is that a chair? That's a Steelers chair.
Yeah, it's a covering that goes over a chair. It's great.
And then you got a bear with, you got a lot of Steelers stuff. So let's talk about that. Let's get that out of the way. Let's talk about why you're doing that and what that's all about.
Sure. Yeah. So we this upcoming season, now that we're in the middle of the season, we launched a new show. It's on YouTube. It's a video-based show called Local Football Flavor. And what we do is we discuss with local fans what's going on with their team. Because everyone who's had this experience of watching a national pundit or broadcast and hear something that's flat out wrong about their team. And the thing is, if it's happening to your team, it's happening to all the other 31 teams out there. So what the aim of local football is to talk to other fans and other fan bases that we wouldn't normally have exposure to and find out what's really going on. And maybe get a little extra crack of nugget of knowledge that might help you with a fantasy wire pickup, might help you with your gambling, because let's face it, those two things are essentially driving football nowadays. And the more I know, the better. And there's lots of stuff I know about the way Mike Tomlin coaches a game here in Pittsburgh that is incredibly valuable with betting, that I know every other coach has these tells that if we just knew them and shared them with each other, it would be more beneficial for any run-of-the-mill person when we know most of the national guys, including the national gambling guys, really only go about inch deep and never really get into the depth. And that's what we try to accomplish here at Local Football Flavor. What's really going on? So when we talk to a guy from the Giants and his whole goal is to get the first pick in the draft because he's tired of being bustling in mediocrity, as an example. So there's all kinds of stuff out there. It's a very entertaining show. We break it down into bite-sized nuggets, but we also display the full interviews, which are hour-long programs.
That's awesome. That's a cool, unique a slant. Let me know. I've got some friends here in the Detroit area who are still Detroit Lions fans. They recall, a couple of them are old enough to recall playoff games. None of them are old enough to remember when, the 50s they were a respectable team. But they live and die with the Honolulu blue and silver. So that would be it'd be fun to listen to them.
Absolutely. We're yet to have a member of Detroit Nation on her. Actually, I don't even know what you guys are called. The Pride, the Lions Pride or something like that.
So we'll I'll see what I can do to help you with a couple of those folks. But one of my friends would have what he called the Super Bowl party, and he said this was the last time during the year that we have something to celebrate, and the party was scheduled around the first round of the draft. So, and it was a big party. There was usually 30 or 40 people there. And the draft was on. It was all serious, lots of food and beverages and stuff. So so we could probably hook you up with some people who care a little bit in this town.
Well, I greatly appreciate that. Thank you.
So let's talk a little bit about we'll get to your business, but your thoughts around selling better, your experience with dealing with salespeople, the reputation that we have, what you think, like kind of like leave it open and see where we can go. Just have a conversation around sales, and then we'll kind of drive that into um, how you go about sales within your business.
Sure. So, little background. I've been in sales since I was 18. Basically, I fell in love with commission very early on and sold commission. I like the notion of getting paid based upon what I did rather than just being around sometimes. And
Yep.
I'm one of these people who sold the Cutco cutlery when I was in college. So there were periods of time where I had no income coming in whatsoever, and then just huge piles of money dumped in my bank account. And at the end of the day, when you look at it, the aggregate, I made much more than what all of my contemporaries in college were doing on hourly rates. But it came at like 4 dumps throughout the year. So it was, you had to learn how to manage your money, all these important skills that most 20-year-olds don't have. Sales kind of forced me to have. So I had
Mhm.
to start by saying, I am 100% on board with commission only sales, which I know puts me in a super minority, but I believe that they are the best thing to create independent wealth in this country. There's no more pure way to get there, because if you're running a business correctly, your salespeople better be the highest paid people. End of discussion. So, that being said, the sales process in totality, at least the way I look at it, I kind of break it into 3 basic chunks that obviously have a ton of nuance into them. But basically, I look at it as, if you're a pizza store, you have to get people to come in the door, you have to get people to actually give you money for the pizza, and then you have to deliver a good pizza. That's basically how I look at the sales process in a big, broad spectrum. I know I am horrible at the first part. Uh, the whole marketing and cold calling and just filling my calendar, I never liked. That's not my personality type. And really, if you look at it, these are personality types going to be better for one or the other. I like
Mhm.
being involved with people, talking to people, selling. The way when people think of salespeople, actually moving contracts and solutions back and forth. But I know if my calendar's not full, it doesn't matter how talented I am. If I never get to come up to bat, I'm never going to hit the ball. That's just the
Right.
way life is. So when I first came out of college, I worked at an insurance brokerage. Long story short, I sold life insurance and annuities, and it basically boiled down to cold calling attorneys and doctors. And I hated every second of it until we actually got in front of someone. And then it was like, whoa, I really can do this. I mean, the first year I was rookie of the year, second year I was underclassman of the year, and third year I left. So like I was good at it. I just hated the prospecting side of the fence, and it burnt me out. So the recommendation I give for people to sell better is find someone who's good at the stuff you're not and pair up, because your personalities are going to be very different. The person will be different from you, but they're going to like that stuff that you hate, and vice versa. So why don't you both figure out a way to make something, and then you figure out how you pay each other after the fact. But something, a percentage of something is better than 100% of nothing. And it's a cliche, but it's true. You also get burnt out doing the stuff you don't like doing. And most of the time, people don't like doing the stuff they're not good at. So you're spending extra energy on things you don't like, and you're getting less results for it. To me, that's just stupid. So I don't do it. I outsource all of that to people who want to be a part of the team. And that's how employees and partners get hired, essentially.
But in the beginning, like you said, right out of college, at the early part of it, it's one of those skill sets, one of those things that you don't have to like, but we all got to do it
Mm-hmm.
in at some point in our career in sales. Um, I don't enjoy it. I enjoy having the conversations, right? When you have that phone call, um, and you make that connection.
Mm-hmm.
But my first gig out of college was a real estate job in New York, commercial real estate. I made 400 plus dials a day, right? And I get people today that tell me I can't make 25 calls in a day. What are you, crazy?
Wow.
Right? Right. That's my reaction. I have to stop myself from laughing. Like, what are you doing all day that stops you from making 25 calls? And sometimes it's 25 outbound, right? Which is could be a phone call, it could be an email, it could be a text message. Um,
Oh,
so
that's even
so
worse.
I think it's something that uh, that we have to work our way through,
Mhm.
and I still do calls. I do those kind of calls every day, just because I need to model what I coach and what I teach,
Mhm.
um, keep my skill sets sharp, and I'm always learning. But the idea that you eat what you kill with commission, right?
Mhm.
That's a really big motivator. I really think that the top salespeople, depending upon where they live, right, they might need some sort of base just to be able to afford the gas to get to an office or the train to get to an office. But 45 to 65% of their pay should all come from at risk compensation. The more, the better. I've had plenty of commission only sales jobs, and I think that's another great mindset to get to. That I got to go out and I got to do something today. I got to go out and make this happen. Um, and that pressure, you either fold up like a cheap suit or you make it work,
Exactly.
and you learn to work through it. So
Mhm.
um, I agree. And as you develop in business, you can find people to help you support lead gen and be able to. And if you're doing a good job, you should be able to get introductions and referrals from people as well.
Exactly. And for my world, the referral game isn't quite the same as it was when I was selling life insurance and annuities. My referrals basically are, someone died and we're talking to the granddaughter. I mean, that's normally where the majority of my properties are coming from, or they're coming from landlords who don't want to be landlords anymore. But I already go to events with them where I'm running into these people all the time. So getting referred to them isn't the same way. It's more of like COVID killed my will to be a landlord, so I don't want to do it anymore, which is a real thing around this country. But I'm not diminishing that at all. I know it's important. Like the fact I went through it and hated it is how I know it's important. I had those at the beginning when I was doing the life insurance annuity. I basically just wanted to make sure my calendar was full so I didn't have to be in the room calling everyone all day. Like my reward was not having to do this anymore. And oh, by the way, it also paid me, which is a very negative way of viewing it. But to the point of the base versus 100%, if you're in a situation where you're only making 100% on commission, it makes it much easier to transition to creating your own business. If you're dependent upon some form of a base, you always kind of have that extra pressure to start your own because to some degree you become dependent upon the base. And I understand why people do it. It's a lot easier to hire someone if you tell them you're going to have a base as well. It makes it a little bit more like the normal part of life. But if you get people who want to have just 100% commission, and even if they don't have a track record of proving that they can do it, but a desire to do it, get that person. I mean, there's no other way to tell you that from a manager standpoint. If someone's fully aware of what the risk is and they still want to jump into that deep end, take them immediately and then figure out how to train them because they're as motivated as you can find.
That they have the motivation, they have the right outlook. I was talking to a guy the other day, and the comp plan for this particular client was $80,000 base with a 8% commission, right? And he could do pretty well. And we were getting closer to the final interview process, and he's like, "Can I ask a question about comp?" And I'm like, I don't like to answer questions about comp this early, but go ahead and see what I can do. He's like, "What if you cut the base in half and raise my commission? What do you think would they be willing to do that?" And I'm like, I think so, right? I love the attitude, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we kind of just fast forwarded him to because he had all the credentials. He had done really well on an assessment we use. He had interviewed well up to that point. But to that was like he's hungry.
Mm-hmm.
He's got confidence that he's going to go out and kill it. And if he doesn't, he's going to self-select out.
Yeah.
Um,
It's also cheaper to get rid of them.
we just shot him to the end of the interview process, and he got hired because of simply because of that attitude, not because it was going to save money. It was the mindset that I'm going to go do this. So they worked out a nice fat commission structure, a couple of more points, but they really put a bonus structure in place so that on a quarterly basis, he got a, a little bit bigger bump a little bit more quickly rather than wait for an annual bonus, right? He got these little tastes. So he was like, I'm in, and he was off to the races, and he's been there for about 3 weeks. His pipeline is full, and he's about to close. He'll have a deal closed in his first month. Yeah, it's a great story. It speaks to your mindset idea.
It does, and it's something that to the credit of those hirings that you're willing to do that, because a lot of people fail at business whenever they're looking strictly at the expense side of the ledger. I know this is a sales thing. I don't want to get too far down a business management route, but paying people a commission is the best way to correlate the results you want as the business owner and the happiness of your employees. Like that's an incredibly testament to you there, to being saying, hey, yeah, we'll figure this out. We want to pay you more because it means you're going to sell more. And that's looking through the revenue side of the ledger rather than the expense side. And that's something that most businesses ultimately fail at because they're too busy about dollars going out rather than getting new ones coming in.
Yeah, I once had I was part of a group of people that owned the same kind of business, and we changed our comp structure, and we gave a much meatier commission with no base, and one of the owners, and there's actually about probably 6 out of the 20 people, like, I'm not writing a check to a salesperson for that much money. And we're like, why not? And they're like, well, that's more than I make. I'm like, well, then you should learn how to sell, perhaps. But with the idea was, it was so narrow minded. It's like he's making $1 and he got to keep 12 cents of the dollar. You got the rest of it to cover overhead and profit. Every dollar that extra he sold, that's more money in your pocket. The fear was writing the big commission check, and it was like we couldn't get them off of the idea, and ultimately their businesses never really grew because of that closed-minded idea of take care of the people that are taking care of revenue, take care of the operations people too, right? Everybody, it's a team. No, just because it comes in the front door, it's got to go out the back door. But those people that are out there killing it with sales should be rewarded. Absolutely.
Yeah. Because if they're not doing well, you don't have a business. You can have the best operations department in the world. If they don't got stuff to make or stuff to sell, clients to entertain, it don't matter.
100%. So there was another idea that was attributed to you when I was doing a little research about the importance of failure. Mm-hmm. And I was kind of interested in your take there. And I'll give you this quote. So Oscar Wilde said that, experience is the name I give to my mistakes. And mistakes are just another, possible failure. And I used to put a corollary to that, in that I'm a really experienced guy because I've made a lot of mistakes in my life. I've learned from them. So, when you're thinking about it's important to fail, like where's that coming from? Can you kind of expound on that a little bit?
Well, yeah. I mean, as I said, I've been on commission my whole life. So there's plenty of times where I thought I was going down a direction where I was ultimately going to get a sale, and, it didn't work out. I've probably realistically have had more sales fall apart in terms of money I've made than most people have had sales created. I mean, I think I'm pretty safe to say that. And the end of the day is those all are not awesome. I mean, no one likes going in thinking that they're going to get a huge, relative to where they're in life, a huge paycheck and then have it fall through your hands. But there's a type of person out there that just implodes and quits when that happens. And then there's another type of person that's willing to turn on the game tape and see, where did we mess up? Was this ever really going to be a possibility? Did I delusion myself? Did I do something wrong? Was there an opportunity if I would have zigged when I zagged? And it takes a lot to go through that. I mean, to actually drill on yourself, what are you doing wrong? What are you doing right? And that's to me, that's what I mean by failure. Being able to escape the prism of yourself. And what I mean by that is be able to look at a situation, no names, just person A and person B, and would it have gone a different way had it been something different? Was it even reasonable to expect what you wanted to happen? And when you start doing those kinds of exercises and removing yourself as much as you can emotionally from the situation, and try to just look at black and white in the facts, it really does open your eyes about how to look at things. And then that process, the next time you're in a situation, you can know what those pitfalls were and try to avoid them. You know, we all can easily avoid a sinkhole when we're going down the road, but can we avoid the little one that starts the car going out of alignment, which once the car stays in alignment, it's really easy to fall out of it. But if you work and avoid all the problems, you can go really far away if you know what the pit holes are.
So that's where I thought you were going to go with that, and I appreciate that, because I look at it as mental toughness, right? We got to be able to have that to be able to get through that no or that lost sale. And then what you're talking about is looking in the mirror, right? We call that a debrief, right? So a sales manager can help somebody debrief what went well, what didn't go well. But we should be able to do that for ourselves, sitting in the parking lot from that meeting, like, okay, what happened? And I have a mentor that I work with, and his idea, his mantra, if you will, if you lose an opportunity that was viable to begin with, right? And that's sometimes debatable. Like maybe you shouldn't have been talking to the person.
Yeah, that's the thing.
But if you didn't win, you did a shitty job of discovery, right? Because then we didn't do our job as well as we should. So if we look at it from the perspective of how did I screw this up? Where did I go wrong? And it could be that little thing, right? Just a little thing that gets us off track, that if we can start to, as you say, miss those little potholes, keep ourselves going forward without bouncing the car all over, that's another rarity in people, to be able to self-diagnose what they did and not blame the economy, not blame the pricing, not blame the prospect, right? Whatever, right? It's usually the person in the mirror who could have done a better job, assuming we were talking to somebody that could have said yes and there was a good fit to begin with.
Yeah, if you look at it, none of us have the ability to change external factors. You know, I can't make my clients have more money. They either have the amount of money to purchase this or not, or we can come up with a solution, or he can qualify for it, some financing company or whatever. But I can't make the climate not be a recession coming up. I can't make inflation not be what it's going to be. I can't make it so that we were allowed to evict tenants for the last 3 years when we weren't. All of those things would have been awesome if I could have changed them, but it's not life. So if you want to have success where you actually have control of your life, address the things you can. Even if it's only a percentage of fixing the problem, at least it's something you can do better. And recognizing that mindset, most people probably are never willing to do that. Most people want to just externalize all problems and think that they're a perfect little rainbow. And the reality is that no, you probably messed up aggressively. And we just got to start finding out where. And that debrief process you mentioned doesn't need to happen after the fact. That what I've found the best people at sales, and what really got me good at it, was figuring out how to almost be like a computer and having two programs running at the same time. One is the let's get this forward in the next direction, while simultaneously figuring out, did I mess something up, and constantly evaluating, did I just hit a pitfall or not? And is there one coming up? So
It's
It's a
it's been
skill.
able to, it's been able to own your sales process and own your methodology about knowing what you're trying to accomplish, knowing where you are and what you need to do next. But knowing that so well that you can just focus on the prospect and really pay attention to body language, pay attention to the nuances of listen to them, really listen. And if you don't understand something, it's about asking those additional questions. Because if you ask the right questions, they'll give you the answers. You might have to ask them a couple of times and give them permission to, make you uncomfortable. But I think that's really important that you're constantly evaluating, looking at that failure as a learning experience. Let's try to avoid it in the future. Let's try to get better. And that's what makes living on commission, owning a business, right, is what makes that work. So,
And one last thing to that point, I know you want to change it, but the thing that I learned through that process, and that the briefing process, as you're calling it, is when I would be there in the meeting, inevitably something would come up that I got to figure out how to get this out and just say this, like, or express it in some capacity. And when I sucked in the beginning, I had so much fear. And then later on, I had regret for not saying these things, like just asking a question that might be a hard question or saying something that might be a little uncomfortable. Now it's like, I feel I did a bad job at selling if I didn't make someone uncomfortable in the minute, because
it shouldn't. That discovery process should be a little bit uncomfortable for the prospect.
yeah, it needs to be. Maybe for you, you got to be able to go somewhere with them that most people aren't willing to go, and that is a real way of making yourself stand out from the crowd. We went through an experience together.
You have to differentiate by showing that you're approaching this differently, pushing back on some of their ideas. You don't have to tell them it's a dumb idea, but you can say, "You mind if I push back on that a little bit?" And then, have you thought about, right? And then you go. It's just being able to bridge those gaps. I was always taught that you can say whatever you want as long as you say it in a nurturing fashion. And I think there's a lot of truth there. Today you got to be a little bit more careful. So why don't you talk a little bit about your real estate business and how how you approach that?
Yeah. So in real estate, I guess in most industries, this is true. You can win any single house, no matter how bad it is, no matter how bad the situation is, if you buy it for a low enough starting price. It doesn't matter how unskilled you are at fixing a house. If you buy it low enough, it'll take care of itself. So the majority of my life is spent acquiring properties, long story short, below market value. And there's an intuition that people have about that I'm doing something wrong or I'm cheating people or whatever. But I explicitly tell you, I have not bought a house in the last 9 years at market value. I don't do that. Now, why would someone want to sell a house when they know they're selling it below market value? And it's because to the people who I'm buying from, money is far from the most important thing. If you are the grandson and this property is an hour and a half away from you, but you're getting harassed about the grass not being cut and you don't have the time to do it, what's more valuable to you? Getting top dollar that you're splitting 4 ways with your siblings, or getting the problem out of your life? And that's one of the very many, many ways I buy houses under market value. But that's how, it's really easy to make a lot more money when you're buying it significantly less than your competition would. So it does involve these types of conversations, getting to what their real pain point is. And don't get me wrong, I am one of these people that believe batting average is overrated. You should go for the slugging percentage. I don't do high volume, low margin sales. I do high profit margin. And as many of them come, they come. But if it means we're going to have to wait longer for the next one, then so be it. And I believe that is a better overall way to do it. I mean, obviously, every closing in itself takes the same amount of time. It's a lawyer. They talk to the taxing agencies. It's going to be the same process that I've mostly outsourced. But it's the same process regardless of whether I make $3,000 on this house or 300 grand. So at the end of the day, there's the same potential, same probability of problems. Let's just do it on the big ones. And, it sometimes takes a partner a minute or two to realize why we do it that way. But at the end of the day, it's better for everyone involved. It really pins me into the type of client I want to buy my house from. And at the end of the day, it's so specialized. It's kind of on self-operating system now. Again, many houses down the line, we're never going to buy or try to buy. But for that select group that we make it work out really well. And it's ends up being a relief to someone that they're getting paid less money just because they're getting it done in the first place. It also is interesting looking at it from the other perspective is technically I'm the buyer. I mean, I'm giving them the money, but every sale is you're giving something for money in exchange. So most people don't look at what I'm doing in the acquisition side as sales. But in reality, it is. Just because I'm on the other side of the coin doesn't mean it's not sales.
It is. It's probably more so than the traditional residential kind of real estate broker, because you have to really dig into the motivation that seller has. You really got to understand what's important to them to really determine quickly if this is an opportunity or not an opportunity, right? Because as you said, somebody might just be stuck with a piece of property that they didn't want, they don't need. It's a nuisance, creating headaches. But then there's other people like, I just don't enjoy owning real estate that other people live in. So could you please take these off my hands, right? And they might have purchased it at a lower price. They're making a little bit of money, but man, they lose the headache. So that's a real sale. Because you have to go through that discovery process to get there. So anybody that's telling you it's not a sale, they're all wet. So I like to wrap these up with a standard question about sales and cigars. Does Joe have a relationship or a story with cigars that you could share?
Yeah, the cigars are one of those things I never really got into. When I do have one, it's probably about 2 or 3 a year. It's almost always a super mild one because I'm not really into bite. I'm also not in IPAs on that matter. But I really do enjoy the whiskey part that goes with the cigars. That tends to be how it normally ends up going. Is I'll start one, but it'll end up with me just enjoying the whiskey much more than the cigar.
But it's a social setting too, right?
Oh yeah,
I would imagine.
It's almost always on the 19th hole overlooking the green as we're talking about how it went down.
Yeah. And is it a bourbon? Is it a scotch? Is it a...
In an ideal world, it is Maker's Mark neat.
Okay. All right. I get it. A little sweet for me, but that's cool. You got to know... I respect the fact that somebody knows what they like, right? And they go to that, and every once in a while you try something, but that's your go-to, and
it makes life easier.
Awesome. All right. Well, I appreciate you taking some time today. We'll hook you up with some Detroit fans that you might be able to help you get some insights from what's going on in this city. They're hoping for change here. Good luck with the podcast and the real estate business. And thanks again for being on.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
To get your copy of Walter Crosby's new book, The 7 Critical Mistakes CEOs Make with Their Sales Organization That Stop the Company from Scaling, follow the link in the show notes or go to Amazon.com. Thank you for listening to Sales and Cigars with Walter Crosby of Helix Sales Development. For more on sales and cigars, remember to like, share, and subscribe. Sales and Cigars, produced by thepodcastproshop.com.